Happy Halloween, my fellow aviators and my beloved mechanics. Welcome to another video here. And on this one is Riverside FSDO. That stands for Flight Standards District Office. Feeding on Corpses-GHOULs. Now with Halloween, we all would love a nice horror story. So please grab some popcorn, maybe a soda, maybe a beer, and sit back and enjoy this video, which will shed light on what it's like when the FAA decides to target you as an airman or a mechanic. For as you will see, all FAA policies and procedures are to be ignored, as well as federal and state laws. Monsters don't follow rules. I guess that's been in every horror movie, so we shouldn't be surprised at all. Now this is going to be quite a long video, so I'm going to break it up into two parts. The first part is just giving you a background for those of you who haven't seen my other videos and kind of explaining about how this whole thing got kicked off with the 2019 Hawaii accident, which took the lives of 11 souls. Then on the second part, I'm going to go more into the federal, the state laws, the policies and procedures that were violated as the FAA attempted to get me. Now, please sit back and enjoy this video, and now I will launch into just the background that you need to know. In June of 2019, we had a parachute jump plane that lost the left engine on takeoff and flipped inverted and resulted in the death of 11 people, the pilot and 10 skydivers. Now you can look at my other videos and my other articles and get more details on this. But the NTSB in their report claimed that the pilot had stalled the aircraft. And you can see that they falsified this investigation by the feathered propeller from the pilot trying to control that aircraft when he lost that engine. Another claim that the NTSB made was that this pilot was reckless due to receiving bad flight instruction from a bad flight instructor. I happen to be that bad flight instructor. So even though that there was no evidence against me, I had done nothing wrong, the FAA decided to go ahead and pursue an investigation to prove I was a bad flight instructor. So now that you have the background, and more of the background is that the reason why they said I was a bad instructor is because I had a 59% failure rate or pass rate on initial check rides. Now this means a student going in to take their private or instrument or commercial, not passing on their first attempt. So my pass rate on first attempts was 59%. That's an F. Now I missed a D. I missed getting a D by 1 percentage point. So I have to admit that was my fault. To be honest with you, in my defense, is that I was training all foreign students at this time with English as their second or third language. I have heard from other flight schools that train foreign students that their initial pass rate is somewhere around 50%. So at 59%, I was actually doing good. Now the FAA, to start off the horror story, is that they provided the NTSB that the national pass rate was 75% on initial check rides. That was true. For every good lie needs a little bit of truth, and that was the truth. What they failed to do was they failed to mention that at the Riverside FSDO during this period, the initial pass rate was 62% for everybody, not just people doing foreign students, for everybody. The Riverside FSDO decided to conceal this information and hide it from us, and hide it in the report. In fact, it took a Freedom of Information Act to attain this information. That's why it's taken me so long to put out these videos, is waiting for all the Freedom of Information Acts to come in. So now with that background, let's begin the horror story. Now, after this accident had occurred, in about 2020, I received a nice friendly call from my local FSDO, and it was a Roy Peters saying that he just needed me to, just provide him with a date so he could come out and observe some ground lessons, some flight lessons, and that this was nothing to be concerned about. Oh no, this was just routine and just standard observation of flight instructors. I've never heard of this happening before in 30 years. But you know what? It was just a routine observation, which I am proud to do. And it gave me a little bit of false hope, because in 30 years I've never had the FAA offer to help in anything and provide no guidance and help as far as a flight instructor. So I was actually kind of excited to have another aviation professional observe my flight training and provide me guidance and help to further benefit my students. So I was all on board. So about a week later, we meet at the restaurant, the Corona restaurant, in the morning for breakfast. Roy Peters is there an hour before the ground lessons is to begin. And he's there and he's all set up. And I come in and introduce myself. My student shows up, we talk. And then Roy just leaves and goes out in the parking lot. Me and my student are just standing there looking at each other like, what's going on? Well, then a brand new FAA inspector shows up, a tall gentleman, at least 6'2", redhead, and they begin talking. And you know what? As they're talking, I started to realize that Roy Peters is a training officer for the Riverside FSDO. Now, most of you have not spent any time in federal law enforcement or federal government agencies, but the training officers are actually the heart and soul and actually the most important job in any government agency. I happened to be a training officer when I was a special agent with the Department of Defense in an agency called the Defense Investigative Service. Here's a picture of my badge. My badge number was 1613 if you want to call and file a complaint. I'm not worried. Nobody answers the phone, so good luck with that. But anyways, I recognized Roy as a training officer, and I just couldn't help myself. I went out there and stood off to the side, just in earshot, but not them noticing that I was there. And to my dismay, I was actually horrified. For Ray was discussing the FAA compliance program. Now, this compliance program came out in about the 1990s, maybe somewhere in there, and it filled me with such hope at that time. Because before this, the FAA and the pilots and the mechanics were just at odds with each other. The FAA was just a heavy-handed guy with a bat coming down, giving violations, and just providing no help and no guidance. This compliance program was from the management in Washington, D.C. that were trying to fix this problem and bring the aviation community and the FAA together at least a little bit. I had such hope for this program, I really did. And then I was observing Roy being a training officer, and he was telling this new employee, screw the FAA compliance program. We are FAA safety inspectors, and we can just do whatever we want to. And they were kind of laughing about it and ridiculing the FAA policy. And at this, I kind of was starting to get a feeling that this Roy guy might be a monster. So with my heart just totally collapsed in my chest from hearing a new generation of FAA inspectors being trained to be monsters, to violate FAA policy and procedures, to abuse airmen, the errors of the past being continued on by the old guard. This really disheartened me. So anyways, I went back into the restaurant and waited for Roy and the new trainee to come in and observe my ground lesson. They purposely took 15 to 20 minutes just talking out there in the parking lot, knowing that we were inside waiting for them. And this was just more to, like, pee on my leg is what it was, and to show me who was boss. Now, my student at the time, he had to get to work. He was getting nervous. And a slight look of disgust was starting to form on his face. What could I say? As I was looking at him, I looked over where Roy was going to be sitting to observe my ground lesson. And there I noticed something funny. There was a child's backpack there. Now, what is a middle-aged FAA safety inspector doing with a child's backpack to observe a ground lesson? Then I noticed the backpack was open, but you couldn't really see the contents of it. Being a special agent, I realized I was being secretly tape recorded. Now, at the time, I decided to keep quiet about this because in state law, if you're in a public area, you have no expectation of privacy. It's not against the law. However, it is against FAA policy and procedures in their manual, operations manual, that they cannot record you without your permission unless it's previously authorized. Now, Roy was already off to a good start showing me how well he followed rules, policies, and laws, so we know he didn't have that authorized. So that's one of the things that I'm going to be pursuing later down the road here and following up on this investigation that they did on me. So then they came in, observed my ground lesson. It was on airspace and weight and balance. I mean, easy peasy. And so after the lesson, Roy complimented me on a great lesson. And then he started what the FAA inspectors always do, asking question after question after question, trying to find some fault with you. Well, eventually he did. And the question was, when does a VFR chart expire? Well, I didn't know. I said, hey, my ground lesson is on using ForeFlight. That updates every 30 days. So I don't know. It's kind of irrelevant now because it updates on the program. Oh my gosh, this was like these guys getting a Christmas present from Santa Claus. Both of their eyes just lighted up and they were so happy. And you know what? Being me, I just have to be me. So I followed up with a question. Okay, FAA safety inspectors, when does a VFR chart expire? All of a sudden, their faces fell. They looked at each other quickly and realized they didn't know the answer either. So then I was subjected to these two gentlemen digging in their pockets, playing pocket polo, digging out their cell phones to go on Google to find the answer. While they were doing this, I looked over at my student, who had previously had a slight look of disgust on his face. Now it was just solid disgust with a little bit of loathing and complete disgust for these guys. I mean, this was just bad form and just dumb, and it was keeping him from work. So I just told him to leave, just go to work. And I tried to think of maybe saying that it isn't always like this, that FAA inspectors don't always conduct themselves in this manner. In 30 years, I couldn't think of one other incident where they didn't act like this, so I just decided it was best to be quiet. So anyways, that was the ground lesson. About a week later, Roy called me up again to schedule a time to come into the office to provide all my FAA records. So I called back, and as you know from watching these videos, and as my students will tell you, when I fly cross-country half-flight following, I am frequently called ma'am. I have the voice of a 12-year-old little girl going through puberty. I just do. Doesn't bother me. I don't care. So anyways, when Roy heard my voice over the phone, he already met me, he already knew who I was. He heard my voice, and he decided to mock and ridicule me and laugh at me. Now, not just the quick little, hey, that's a funny voice. Okay, hey, that's fine, don't care. He kept this up for a good 3 to 5 minutes where it was completely inappropriate. And once again, this was just Roy peeing on my leg like a stray dog, marking his territory, putting me down, ridiculing me, mocking me. This horrified me. This gentleman is a training officer for the Riverside FSDO. And here he is mocking an airman because of them being different. Roy did not know whether I was gay, if I was transgendered, or what was going on with me. But he took the opportunity to see that I was different and to mock and make fun of me. Now, this is strictly against the FAA administrator's policy on non-discrimination. I will be sending this off to the accountability board to see what they have to say about it. Do they enjoy their training officer making fun of somebody that's different? Has a girly voice? Can you imagine this inspector? This is not the first time and only time he has done this. There has to be other victims out there. And if there is one more victim out there that he has mocked and ridiculed for being gay, for being transgendered, for being black, for having a different skin color or a different voice, that's one too many. So that was another policy violation. So now I had in my mind that, yeah, I was dealing with a monster. So then, week goes by, I go into the Riverside FSDO. Now, gentlemen, this is the scary part of this horror story. This is one of the scary points. When you go into the FSDO, I have heard accounts over the years of airmen and mechanics going into the FSDO providing their documents, airworthiness, registration, pilot license, medical. And then the FAA inspector there takes the documents and refuses to return them. And then you say, why aren't you giving me back my documents? I need those. And he says, no, you just surrendered them. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. And then he walks off with your documents, and there you go. Can you imagine what your options are then? Hey, call the FSDO that, hey, they don't answer the phone. Maybe talk to the supervisor, who also thinks it's funny. Maybe send an email to the FSDO, and they don't have a working email. Do you know that the Riverside FSDO has an email on their website that's non-functioning? The inspectors know it. I called and called and called. I finally got one of them. He said, oh, yeah, it just doesn't work. I said, are you guys going to fix it? He said, no. I said, well, how do I send an email to you guys? And then he gave me a big 18-digit email that also nobody responds to. So that's the kind of service that we've been getting from the FSDO for decades. So that's just normal. So when you go in there, do what I did. I held on to my documents. I held on. I say, here, I'm presenting my documents to you. And of course, Roy grabbed them and tugged back, tug. And then he realized I wasn't going to let go. This infuriated Roy. He turned beet red and started yelling at me. And I was just waiting for him to say, you are not surrendering your documents. Because that's what I kept saying. I am not surrendering my documents. I wanted to hear him say that so it'd be on the security tape because we're in the front lobby of the FSDO. It's being videotaped. So this got him really mad and finally said, you're getting your documents. By gosh, you're getting all your documents. I let go of them and here you go, have fun. Knock yourself out. Now remember, I was violating perhaps the most important FAR there is that is not written in the FARs. That is failure to bend the knee. If you do not bend your knee to these FAA inspectors, you will find yourself in front of a dragon getting burned to death. Yep, that's how it is. So anyways, he had my documents. I knew I was getting them back. So he took my driver's license, my medical, my pilot logbook, all my results from written tests and check rides, and made copies of them. Now, after he made copies of them, found out that he didn't have the information to come after me because Roy had already decided that he was going to suspend and revoke my licenses no matter what it took. So he came around the corner and slithering around just like a snake with a nice big smile after we had just been yelling at each other. So then he was good cop. So now he is just my best friend. So now he was telling me that I needed to provide all my pilot records for the last 30 years. This isn't in the FARs. Then he stated that I needed to show each and every dual flight instruction that I have done over 30 years. So, of course, I looked at Roy, and this was just dumb. This was just dumb. So I couldn't resist. I said, hey, do you happen to have a FARs here in the office? Maybe you could look that up and show that to me. And, of course, it wasn't in the FARs. He was just being deceptive. So once again, I wasn't on my knees. So once again, I got a bellow of fire in my face. Yeah, I'll do that. I know what I'm talking about. So I said, okay. And then I couldn't resist, because one of the major jokes in aviation is send a letter. The FAA FSDO inspectors, the FAA safety inspectors, all they do all day is write letters on trivial matters, blaming airmen for insignificant violations, then giving them 10 days to respond. Here's the funny part, is that often they just send it to the wrong address on purpose so that you don't respond to it, and then they close it out saying you just didn't respond. Now, this is a joke among all the pilots and mechanics. Hey, send a letter. This is even a joke among the FAA inspectors. Yeah, send a letter. That's all they do. So anyways, I couldn't resist, so I said, Roy, can you send me a letter? His eyes lit up, and he was like, oh, yeah, I'll send you a letter. I'll send it to you right away. I still haven't gotten that letter. So anyways, when you're dealing with these folks, be aware, whatever they say is not the truth. It can be very deceptive and not according to the regulations. So then, with that being said, I finally said, can I have my documents and leave? And then once again, he was going on that I didn't provide all the documentation needed. So then I said, please write that letter. Roy, I can sit here and wait for you. I'm retired. I'll sit here and wait for you. Write that letter. At this, he got infuriated once again. And then Roy bellowed out at the top of his voice, yelling in the front lobby of the FSDO, we are the federal government and we can do whatever we want to. I was horrified. I didn't know this was FAA policy or procedure. All the supervisors in the office could hear this statement. None of them came out to check to see what was going on. The secretaries in the front office there writing letters to wrong addresses to airmen over insignificant violations, they didn't even bat an eye. So this came up often. This was just standard practice there. And I looked over, and here's a young trainee, a new FAA safety inspector being trained by Roy, because he's the training officer there. And then I saw him, and he, unlike the first tall redhead guy, this guy actually looked remorseful. Like he was witnessing an airman being abused. I wonder if, during his interview, if he was told that his job was to become a bully, to abuse airmen, to be deceptive, to lie. I don't think so. This young Asian guy, I could tell he was just thinking to himself, I should have gone to med school. And he should have. But anyways, that's what happened there. So now, I would like to stop here and take a break. And in part 2, when you come back, we'll start off with, after they received my records, what they did with them, and the 3 criminal misdemeanors under the Privacy Act of 1974, plus violating my Fourth Amendment rights of unlawful search and seizure of my records, and then just the flagrant disregard for FAA policy, procedures, and civil behavior. So I hope you come back for part 2 of this video, and I hope that you enjoyed this, and please send me an email and I'll send you this flight patch of Riverside FSDO feeding on Corpses-GHOULs. And these patches are free, so any of the patches that you see in this video or in the article, you can download this article at aviatorsmarket.com. I'll leave a link there for you, and you can read the article, which goes into more detail. So now I'd like to say happy Halloween, and that if you'd like to support this channel, please consider me for doing your flight reviews, doing advanced multi-engine training, or maybe making donations for these patches. So with that, I would just like to say peace, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.